live at Canu. It's
Okay, the
Mark
next
McGregor
critical item
Show.
that's involved for your walk around would be the hook block. Three things that you must identify on a hook block: that there's proper stamp on it. So this stamp, it gives you the weight, the serial number, and all the items that are required to know for the particular load weight calculations. So we have it embossed inside the side, the cheek plate. So first thing, stamp. Second thing is the latch kit. All crane hooks must have an operational latch kit. And then the third thing that I'm checking is the condition of the hook. So I'm checking the tip, make sure it's not bent side to side. I see the hook is a sister hook, twin hook, and we got lots of meat on both sides of the hook. So everything looks like it's free to move. The swivel's good to go. So three things: stamp, latch kit, hook. Now anything else would be a bonus. I'm checking the cheek plates. I'm checking the keeper pins, make sure they're good. Checking the condition of the shivs. There's no cracks in them, as an example. So that would take care of the whole entire hook block. After that, I would check the upper works. So now that I'm at the hook block, I'm going to be checking my A2B. Usually it's good practice when it's pulled out, give it a little pull, make sure the A2B is deployed and snaps back in. I call this the donut. Donut part of the A2B. Make sure it's properly mounted. I see that it's got a chain and it has to be at the proper manufacturer's length. So we've got that, and we have a dead end. It's not a wedge and socket, that's called a button socket. And the reason why it's called a button socket, because there is a button on the inside of that socket. I see up on top that there's a mechanical lever and a button up on top, and it says danger. And I've read that danger sticker previously, and that danger sticker is identifying that mechanical arm has to be up in the up position, and that button has to be popped out so it's locked into position. If it was any other way, that cable could fall out of the socket, and that would cause a tremendous amount of damage. That button socket is connected to the becket that's attached to welded to the head of the boom. And I see that the pin that's connecting the button socket to the becket, it's in the right position. You want that snap ring on the outside, because if you were reeved up fully, all those hoist cables would saw into the snap ring and it could potentially fall out. You want to make sure the snap ring pins or any other cotter keys for that fact are in the right position, meaning that if you boom the machine up, if the little latch on that snap pin was deployed, gravity would hold that snap pin into position. So you have to think like that as a crane operator. When the boom's up in the air, that would be pointing in the right direction. It would be held there by gravity. So we come along. I want to focus on the head section now. I'm checking all the head shivs. It looks like they're free of cracks, no fractures. Doesn't look like the cable's sawing through any of the shivs. You got a cable keeper going up. You got a couple of guide shivs up on top. Cable keepers up there. I see the 4 rabbit ears for the jib. Looks like they're in good shape. There's nothing plugging them up. We're coming around the corner. We have a rooster shiv that's attached to the head section. Going up above the rooster shiv, we've got an airport light and an anemometer. So all those are controlled by the BKE box inside the operator's cap. Looks like it's probably mounted. Same with the rooster shiv. Looks like nothing's going to fall off. Looks like all the cotter keys and the snap pins are in the right location. So we're at the very top of the boom for inspection. I can see that there's cable rollers up on the top. I also noticed that the cable is not running off the side of the machine. It looks like it's in the proper areas. Coming down along the side of the boom, we got angle irons sticking out, and then behind the angle iron you got yourself what they call as a winter package for the hydraulic hose reel. On the hydraulic hose reel you got yourself some quick connect couplings for hydraulics. The hydraulics would be used for offsetting the jib angle. Coming down underneath the boom, we got ourselves what we refer to as a horse stick. And on that horse stick, that's one of the methods that you could attach the boom into a boom dolly. And behind the horse stick, you got yourself 2 other big, huge pins that could be used for attaching the boom into a dolly. You got mechanical lights behind all the boom dolly pins. And if you hook up the Liebherr computer properly, as you raise and lower the main hook block, those lights will mechanically follow the direction of the hook. It's all automated. So that takes care of all the items underneath on this side of the boom as we come around. So we're focusing on the upper works. Got a cable guide up on top. The cable will run underneath the bracket that's up on the very top of the boom where it says L for La Prairie. So we got that cable guide up on top. Coming along, we have an LMI reel. Some of the guys will go up on top of the machine before they operate and give it a little tug just to make sure the spring-loaded device works. It's got a winter package on it as well. There is an inspection window on the back end, but you might need a flashlight to actually physically see the cable on the inside. Whenever you stick out your section of boom in the morning, especially on a cold day, make sure that LMI reel turns, otherwise it can pull all the wires off the connectors. Coming along on the upper works, there is a little box where it says A for crane. That little box is a sensor for your computer. It tells you what the boom angle is for your LMI. That's what that box is. Coming along the side of the boom, underneath we see a boom hoist cylinder. It's a single stage cylinder. In other words, it's gravity fed. What happens is when you boom down, there is no hydraulic force from the pump or the reservoir. It's all fed by gravity when you boom down. Make sure there's no leaks. Make sure the yokes are good. All the pins that hold that boom hoist cylinder in position is properly mounted. Coming along, we have ourselves the operator's cab. The stairs, this catwalk is activated by the BKE box up on top. They're hydraulically assisted in and out with the motor, so that's kind of a cool feature. And the other thing about the cab is that you can control the cab angle by the BKE box as well. So the cab tilts on this particular model. So that would be all that you would need to know about the cab. So we come behind the operator's cab, and we see underneath here we have another Webasto that's used for the heater for the upper works inside the operator's cab. This is diesel fed. There is also a huge diesel tank back in there as well. Drain plug underneath to get all the water out of the system if you're ever had to clean out the system. And then going up on the very top here of the cab, you have a special panel with special attachments going into the panel. That is got to be locked and secured. You do not want to go in there as an operator. Only a technician would go in there, because it could blow out the different computer bus bars that are in there. So they're highly sensitive to static, and I believe also for pressure. So you just leave that as it is. If there's anything that's wrong in there, you have to get a proper technician, and they have the proper tools. So we're coming over on top, and we have an air conditioner unit up on top. So that's used for keeping the operator nice and cool in the summertime. And behind the air conditioner unit, you got yourself an auto lube dispenser for Liebherr. Based on the hours of the machine, the auto lube will inject grease through the whole entire system. So it's pretty well a maintenance-free type of a machine as far as lubricating grease going through the system. Also up on the top, before we come down, I see a hydraulic cylinder for your counterweight. Make sure it's properly mounted, that there's no leaks going in and out of the hoses. And I'm also taking a look underneath the counterweight, make sure that the cylinders are totally retracted, so that when I swing around, you're not going to be scraping on the deck or any other piece of the machinery. I see there's a trunnion up on top of this counterweight as well, and I'm aware that this stone weighs 2.4 tons. And I have to input that into the computer to make that LMI work first thing, because I can't lie to the computer and say it's got more or less. I have to identify exactly what's on the machine.
Tones.
It is in tones, little t. Just before I come down, I also see that there's a pivot pin. In other cranes they call it a foot pin. I see there's a grease line coming in from the auto lube from there. And I see that there's a keeper plate bolted inside of the pin. I know that my boom length on a hydraulic crane is measured through the center of that pivot pin to the center of the shaft of my head section head shifts. All of these attachments are mounted onto what they call as a superstructure, and the superstructure is where that little lifting D-ring is down by the counterweight. So that's what holds the crane cab, the crane boom, and the counterweights all along. It's called the superstructure. Also take notice, I read all my decals as I've been going around the machine on the carrier and the upper works. Anytime you mention decals once, that will be good for walk around. Going underneath the counterweight, I don't see anything hanging off, no leaks coming from the winch up on top. What I would do is I'd come back here a little bit. On some of the machines you might be able to stand back far enough and actually see your cable on your winch drum. Make sure your cable's in alignment. We already checked the sides of the boom, make sure the cable wasn't coming off the sides of the boom before we squirted it out. We see two big pins on the back of the counterweight. That's for your auxiliary winch if you had that package. And it's also for extra counterweights for this package as well. So it looks like everything's mounted properly, nothing's hanging down. We see the quick disconnect couplings up on top for the auxiliary winch. Focusing on the upper works. Hydraulic cylinder up there, we already mentioned that. We already mentioned the foot pin, so we're coming down. And we got all this grab handles down here. That should be good to go. Take a look inside our valve bank area here. Is it locked? Being fussy. Well, I've got tall guys here. A couple things that you will mention inside the valve banks is wherever there's a mechanical lever for the transport dolly mode. These levers are generally applied to your boom hoist cylinder as well as your swing motor. They may have locks to lock them out so that nobody can switch them. Otherwise, the boom could fall out of the air if it was deployed in the wrong position. So we have a series of locks. We have a swing motor in the back. There is a dipstick in the back for the swing motor. Coming along, we have a series of hydraulic valves and banks. If you had to do some diagnostics, there's a bunch of fittings up there you could hook on for your hydraulics to test out your hydraulic diagnostics if you're a mechanic. Got a couple of hydraulic filters in the back there. And I'm checking the wires to make sure that nothing's loose, nothing's leaking out of the system. That should take care of all of the information inside your valve bank. There. Get up in there. Come along, we've already done the ring gear on the carrier. So we're coming along here. We have a pinion gear down underneath the ring gear hooked onto the swing motor. It's got a shroud on the outside, make sure there's no debris or anything getting down inside the ring gear and the swing pinion. Look good?
Can't see Jack in there.
No, it'd be too dark in there. We have an accumulator here that's used for boom dolly transportation because the boom will float up and down when it's in a certain mode, and the oil from the boom hoist cylinder has to go somewhere, so it'll go inside the accumulator. Coming along, we see some jib brackets for the jib. The jib is stored on this machine, so it's not an additional weight for the load weight calculations. You got brackets that will hinge the jib on and off. We did the boom hoist cylinder on the upper works. We're checking for the cable, make sure it's in the proper guides up on top. And we're just following along the upper works here. And we see that there's a cylinder for the jib, and that mechanical cylinder is used to grab the jib cord and pushes the jib off the machine. And once it's close enough, it will retract the jib on the machine by the hydraulic cylinder. Basically, it's a one-man operation. On some of your Bluetooth devices, it will activate that cylinder. On some of the older lead bearers, you'll have to get an umbilical cord, a little electrical box on a control panel, and you will hook it up inside your valve bank system, and it will control that little cylinder there. If you ever do put a jib on these machines that doesn't have a hydraulic offset, make sure that hydraulic offset on the jib is secure, because there's a hydraulic cylinder inside the jib. You want to make sure that it doesn't leak as you swing it around, because it could drop on you if it's not pressurized. So be careful if you ever do put a jib on this type of machine. Make sure it's pressurized and locked before you pull it off the brackets. Other than that, coming along here, if you had to reeve up all 10 parts or whatever this machine's got, 10 parts of line, you'd have to hook an auxiliary sheave off that becket where it says warning lash point. That's the area that you would actually hang your sheave off of, the auxiliary sheave. And you come around and check the rabbit ears, and that should be the complete walk around for the upper ones. Any questions?